Hey, folks, we're back and we are going to shift the gear, as Alan said, to talk a little bit about cybersecurity. But there's one of these ransomware gangs out there called Hunters, and they sent out a note saying, hey, basically they're getting out of that business. They even sent folks the keys to decrypt their data, and other folks are saying, well, maybe this is just another head fake. But Alan, what's your take on what's going on here? Did these people suddenly wake up one morning and decide that they needed to do an act of contrition?
So first of all, let me say this is on an article on Security Boulevard. Should be in your ticker. Check it out. But Mike, this isn't black hats turning to white hats. This is, you're saying they're changing jerseys. What they're really doing is going back in the locker room, putting on just a different number jersey so you don't know which bad guy is which. But they're still bad guys, right? And this isn't the first time these people have done this kind of, change of protocol, change of attack vector move, right? They're one of the big ransomware as a service operators. And, this is now the second time where they're saying, hey, we're pivoting. It's when you think about it, right? This is a very mature ecosystem where you have companies that pivot. But let's be clear, they're not pivoting to the good guy side of the screen. They're not here to help you with your ransomware. They're not here to release new zero-day vulnerabilities and a responsible disclosure method to prevent bad guys from hacking you. That's not it at all. They're just saying this particular attack vector has gotten a little bit harder. It's gotten a little bit too crowded, a little too competitive. I'm not making the profit margins I used to. And we're going to go find something that is profitable, maybe easier. And that's what they're doing. So they have the same jerseys on, just maybe different numbers so you can't tell who's who. But they're still bad guys.
So are you saying, Alan, that this particular route of criminal profit is drying up for them, so they're shifting to another and waving their hands over here like they're
Yeah. I mean, overall, so the ransomware, encrypting your data ransomware game isn't paying the kinds of dividends it was, let's say, during COVID 3 years ago, 3 years ago, for a lot of reasons, right? People are wise, better educated, so they don't fall for it as easily, in spite of AI improving the phishing. Better solutions in terms of keeping offline copies that allow you to reinstall or overcome the encryption of ransomware. Cyber insurance companies getting involved and knowing what the going price is and stuff like that. Overall, ransomware, the margins on running a ransomware business are not what they were 3 years ago. There's probably lower hanging fruit, more money to be made doing even the ransomware people have moved from encrypting your data to doing something else, right? To hostage you, basically, to ransom you, right? Ransom is not just encryption anymore. And so I'm sure we'll see them resurface with a new game in town, right? They go from 3-card Monte to the shell game.
So do you think that this represents some level of progress, though, and the fact that they feel compelled to go shift? And is this an example of maybe where we're actually winning, or is this like a Charlie Sheen definition of what winning means?
If it'll make you feel better, yeah, we're making progress, but this is the cat and mouse game that is security. Before we called it cyber and before it got so fancy, it's always been a cat and mouse. It more than cat and mouse. You know what it's really like? Roadrunner and Coyote. And the security guys are Wile E. Coyote dealing with Acme. And soon as Acme sends me a good unencrypted ransomware kind of solution, Roadrunner comes up with something else, right? We're always a step behind. And so nothing lasts forever, right? We still, we don't have code red worms infecting us, or, the love virus, or whatever it was called. This is the way of the world in security. You move on to the next scam, right? You move on to the next attack vector. You move on to the next, money maker in terms of how they're doing it. And they will. They did it before. They weren't always what they are now, right? This is security. Yes. So, it took us a little while, but we've definitely made progress on encrypted ransoms as a vector.
Mm-hmm. Or, Guy, let's look at it another way. Won't they just come back with a more efficient model for doing the same thing? Who knows? Maybe they'll use AI tools to start generating these attacks, and they'll find a more economical approach, and then they'll just be back doing it again.
Yeah, it sounds like Alan saying what I was saying roughly in the last segment, which is that everything is old. That's old is new again. It's just that the criminals are going to crime, and if they are cyber criminals, they're going to cybercrime, and it's whack-a-mole all day long forever. Right? That seems awfully pessimistic, but nonetheless,
it's the reality.
It's human
of
nature. Human nature doesn't change. So
no, but it's also the reality of being a cybersecurity professional. And there's a reason why we have the burnout rates we do in cyber. There's a reason why we have, some of the issues that we have on a human level with our cybersecurity pros, because it is frustrating. You do make progress. You fight the good fight every day. You fight the good fight. You try with limited resources, going up against gangs like this that are, making money hand over fist, or well-funded, oftentimes are under the benevolent eye of a foreign entity that allow them to operate. And, and it is a whack-a-mole game. And after doing it for a while, you get tired of it, and you kind of get jaded and desensitized and all the other bad things that come with it. And, it is what it is. Black Hat's coming up next month. I'll be out in Vegas doing video there. And, that was always the premier place for security researchers to show, right? It's not RSA where it's the industry throws a conference for itself. Black Hat, at least used to be, the place where security researchers go to show off their latest research. And I'm sure there'll be new vectors and new attack methods that are going to be shown at Black Hat that take the place of sort of the encrypted ransomware. Let me be clear. Encrypted ransomware is only one kind of ransomware. There are other ransomware, blackmail kind of things and stuff that are out there.
Point taken, but can we ask the wizards on the call, Garima and Mike Vizard, who is almost literally a wizard in his last name, and John, our Silicon Valley dean. I feel like in the broad scope of history, crime has gone down, and new avenues for criming appear. But why wouldn't they follow the same curve? Now, it could take decades, but why crime went down, across the world.
Oh, no, sorry.
Let's get into that. I mean, let's take, for example, the lottery. I can go buy a lottery ticket and it's perfectly legal. And yet I'm more than familiar with people who are still running numbers games down in places. And it's still very popular, even though technically it's illegal. And the people running it are definitely mobsters. But we tolerate that. So my question is back to you guys. Are we really after eradicating cybercrime, or are we just trying to contain it to some level of acceptable cost that we can all kind of then wink at?
So that's an old view of security, right? So when I first got into security, late 90s, basically retail businesses built into their model 0.5% cost. So whatever their revenue was, they would allocate 0.5% to, call it shrinkage via cyber, via security, via computer security. And to them, and that was an acceptable amount built into the model because they were highly profitable. It was built into their margins. And this is before e-commerce was as big as maybe it is now, right? But 0.5% was acceptable risk. And that right there, guys, not just Guy, but ladies and gentlemen, is security. Security is not about stopping every attack. Security is not about having zero risk. Security isn't about whack-a-moling every mole. Security is about managing risk. And so at the highest level, a good CISO, a good risk management team looks at what is my risk from ransomware, from encrypted ransomware, versus my risk from a zero-day vulnerability on my cloud-facing server versus the risk of other risks that I deal with in business. And they make a decision. How much will it cost to mitigate, right? My risk of attack is 60%. I could mitigate it down to 20% at a cost of X dollars. It's an equation. And so do I want to pay X dollars to take my risk from 60% to 20%? Well, how about if I pay Y dollars and take it to 40% instead?
Yeah, that's the annualized loss expectancy that we've been talking about for years, and isn't always really put into practice.
Look at large enterprises. This is, especially retail, e-commerce, this is what they go through. This is the exercise.
I'm going to date myself, but I remember years and years ago, I remember writing about eBay and the fraud and how that was an issue, back in the day. And they would just say, look, it always comes down to a certain percentage of acceptable losses or instances of fraud. You can't have everything. And they always would give me a certain percentage. The issue with me sometimes though is their percentage remained the same, yet the business was booming. So fraud in terms of dollars lost was increasing every year. But you're right. It's a formula for them.
It's risk management. And at the end of the day, sometimes even good security people lose sight of that because we don't want even one attack to get through. We want to whack every single mole.
Yeah, so let's, also add technology to this mix. This is a business perspective, but if, I talk about two things because I think it's essential to talk about the good work which we have done. Organization like Maitre has also done an excellent job in, protecting our businesses and laying out a strategy. And if you look at this particular, threat vector, they have published specific white papers how to contain them. So I would like to pat their back. On the other side, we also do not also shy away from the fact that quantum is coming. So there might be some, this is a emerging technology game, right? So we need to ensure that we are equally aware that what are the next steps or next tactical steps in this process of changing jerseys, right? So maybe that is something which we should start to think about, and organizations like Maitre and other organizations who are working in the space would be actively engaged in figuring it out, the next steps.
There is, and we're about out of time. Let me close this segment with this, though, some good news. As we sit here today, we are more secure, and it is harder for the bad guys to be successful than it's ever been. And every day we get better. They get better too, but every day we get better. So, especially for my security people out here, you're my people, we know how hard you fight. We know how hard it is doing this job. And we know how many holes you close and how many vectors you close off and the great work, yeoman's work that security professionals do. And it is appreciated, and it does get better. It's just, in many ways, the game is set, the rules of the game are set as such that it's impossible for us to have total victory, right? Like World War II type total victory. The bad guys are never surrendering. I don't care what these ransomware scumbags do. They're bad guys. They're bad people. And that's who they are. We do the best we can. So that's it. I'm going to step off my soapbox.
Is that like the cyber thin blue line? Is that what that was?
Yeah, exactly. We've got a great Tech Strong TV show following this. Actually, we have our good friends at Tech Field Day. Steven and the gang have a Tech Field Day going on, so we'll have you take a look at that, as well as Tech Strong TV. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, John, Garima, Guy, Mike, thank you. Thank you for watching. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.